Hello, students, and today we are going to have a look at some of the solved punctuation questions, which are, of course, SAT styled. Let's get started. So, I think I'm gonna discuss around 18 questions and I'm gonna solve them now. Let's get started. So, this one here. So, question one, we look at the area that we are being tested at. So, of course, we're being tested. Sorry for that. Yeah, of course, we are tested here from here until here. So, in 2017, the couple converted a vacant lot in the city into an apiary. And in the years that followed, they acquired 9 additional lots and established more than 35 hives. So, we see that we have got two independent clauses. So, this is IC1, this is IC1, this is an introductory element, and after the introductory element you put a comma, and then after the independent clause you need to have a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So we pick this because in the years that followed they acquired 9 additional lots and established more than 35 hives is your independent clause 2. So you join two independent clauses with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Why is C incorrect? Because there is a coordinating conjunction, but the comma is absent. B is a clear case of a comma splice. B is a clear case of a comma splice, and A is a fused sentence. A is a fused sentence. So the correct answer, of course, here is D. So here you're being tested on joining two independent clauses. So I'm just gonna write the structure of this question. So first we have an introductory element. After that we have a comma. Then we have independent clause number 1. The couple converted a vacant lot in the city into an apiary. After that we have a comma. Then we have a coordinating conjunction. Post that we have independent clause 2. In the years that followed, they acquired 9 additional lots and established more than 35 hives. Now, in the years that followed is your introductory element for independent clause 2, of course. But it says that sometimes, the text might not have a comma after the introductory element, and that should be okay. But you should always put a comma after the introductory element. So in the years that followed is the introductory element for independent clause number 2. And then after that you start your... So in real sense, the independent clause 2 is they acquired 9 additional lots and established more than 35 hives. So yeah, I hope this was helpful. Let's move on to the next question. All right, so though Paul Revere is best known today for his midnight ride during the American Revolution, thanks to the word though, we realize that this is, a DC. We have, though the subordinating conjunction, and Paul R is subject and is your verb. So we understand that this is a dependent clause. So after the dependent clause, we just find where our dependent clause ends. Though Paul R is best known for his midnight ride during the American Revolution, this is where our dependent clause ends. So the correct answer is C. And then you start your independent clause. He was famous in his own day as a prosperous silversmith and businessman. So the structure here is DC plus comma. The structure is fairly straightforward, and then we have IC. Why is A incorrect? Because you do not join an IC and a DC with a semicolon. That is incorrect. Again, B is also incorrect. You do not join a DC and an IC with a comma and a coordinating conjunction. And D, incorrect because it lacks a comma. And there should be a comma between revolution and he. So I hope this was helpful. Let's move on to the next question. LT is the inaugural poet laureate of the N Nation. Her book SD, The Women Are Singing, dash a combination of fiction and memoir, comma, poetry, and prose, uh, blank serves as a testament to her versatility as a writer. So we see that here we have a dash, so chances are that there is a non-essential element. So this is your independent clause. Her book, SD, The Women Are Singing, serves as a testament to her versatility as a writer. This is your independent clause, and there is a non-essential element, which is a combination of fiction and memoir, poetry and prose. This is your non-essential element, and you see that here we are using the dash to separate the non-essential element on one end, so on the other end you should also have a dash. So the correct answer is A. All right, I'm just gonna write the structure. So we have an independent clause. Her book, SD, The Women Are Singing, serves as a testament to her versatility as a writer, and in that independent clause there is a non-essential element separated by dashes. Now, why is B incorrect? Because you need to have a dash. Now, C, you can't just be very choosy. You can't be like so much experimental uh, when it comes to separating non-essential elements. If you put a dash on one end, you should put the dash on the other end as well, not a comma. And D, semicolons are never used to separate non-essential elements. It's just never a thing. All right. Okay. So then we move on to the fourth question. Now, according to the NN of the University of Edinburgh, the reason seeds from a dying dandelion appear to float the air while falling is that their porous plume enhance drag. So I think this is where in all honesty, your independent clause is the reason seeds from a dying dandelion appear to float in the air while falling is that their porous plumes enhance drag. This is your independent clause. Now, here we see that B is C is outright incorrect because after the semicolon, you should be expecting an independent clause. So is that their porous plume enhanced drag is clearly not an independent clause. So we eliminate C. Then the same thing with B as well. The colon is used to either introduce a list or an explanation. And before the list or an explanation, or let's say before the colon, you need to have a full sentence. Now, the reason seeds from a dying dandelion appear to float in the air while falling is not a full sentence. So we also eliminate B. Now we just have a tie between A and D. So what is the thing? So let's have a look at the independent clause here. So first we have the subject, which is the reason. Subject. And after the subject, there is an adjective clause. And that adjective clause starts from seeds and it continues until falling. And after the adjective clause, your verb starts, which is. And subject is the reason. Now, when you see the reason seeds from a dying dandelion, when you say that, you mean to say the reason why seeds from. So you see that why is implicit here. So there is this adjective clause, why seeds from a dying dandelion appear to float in the air while falling. This is your adjective clause. And it is an essential adjective clause, which is modifying the subject, the reason. So if there is no comma before why or seeds, to be more specific, you should not have a comma after the word falling, the exact place where the adjective clause ends. So we pick D because if there is an adjective clause, if it's essential, you should not put a comma before or after the adjective clause. So the correct answer is D. So I hope this was helpful. Excuse me. Okay, so I think in this one, an element's atomic number is equal to. So I think in this one, we can clearly select D as the answer. Why? Because before or after a preposition, you're not supposed to have any punctuation mark. So an element's atomic number is equal to the number of protons in its nucleus, the number electrons in a charged state, and the approximately half of its atomic mass. So we see that before or after a preposition, there is no need for any punctuation mark. Not only you're tested on the usage of punctuation marks, but you're also tested on the non-usage of the punctuation marks. Number 6. When he returned from the Galapagos Islands in 1835, Charles Darwin brought back a young tortoise named Harriet. Blank would live over 170 years. So we see that. Let's just try to analyze the sentence structure. We have this DC. After the DC, we have a comma. And then we start our IC. Charles Darwin brought back a young tortoise named Harriet. So Harriet is where your independent clause ends. So after whenever your independent clause, either you need to have a period. Is there a period in A? So we eliminate A. Either you have a semicolon. So D looks promising and even B looks promising. And you should have a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So comma and a coordinating conjunction are just not there in the options. So we also eliminate C, because if we pick C, that's going to be a fused sentence. There needs to be a comma and a coordinating conjunction or a semicolon or a period between two independent clauses. So C is going to be a fused sentence, which we definitely do not want. And A is going to be a comma splice. Now, why is D the correct answer? Why is D the correct answer? It's because two independent clauses are appropriately being joined by a semicolon. B is incorrect because who would live over 170 years before passing away at the Australian Zoo it's an adjective clause, and all adjective clauses are dependent in nature. So you can't join an independent clause and a dependent clause with a semicolon. That's just not how it works. So yeah, D is the correct answer. So I'm just going to write the structure here. So first we have a DC, when he returned from the Galapagos Island in 1835. Then you have an IC, Charles Darwin brought back a young tortoise named Harriet. Then you have a semicolon. And after the semicolon, you have an independent clause. She would live over 170 years before passing away at the Australian Zoo in 2006. So that will be IC2. All right, we're going to move on to the next one. 7. The field of geological oceanography owes much to American geologist Mary Tharp, pioneering oceanographic cartographer whose detailed topographical maps of the ocean floor and its multiple rifts, valleys help garner acceptance of the theories of plate tectonics and continental drift. So, okay, so quite wordy this question. So the field of geological oceanography owes much to American geologist is your IC geologist, and then you see that American geologist is a title for this person called Mary Tharp. Okay, so no need to separate the title and the name with any punctuation marks. So the correct answer is A. The field of geological oceanography owes much to American geologist Mary Tharp. And after the independent clause, you put a comma, like here, you put a comma, and you start, your non-essential element. So whatever comes after, Tharp is just non-essential information, trust me. Yeah, and the non-essential element starts from a pioneering and it ends at drift. All right, I'm going to move on to the next one. I think I have the same question. Okay. So this will be question 7, and this is going to be question 8. I'm just going to quickly do the corrections. So it'll be question 9, question 10, question 11, question 12, 13, 14, 15, 16, 17. Okay, so all in all, we're going to discuss 17 questions. I think we have already discussed 7 questions, and we're just going to cancel this. Okay, so let's come to the 8th question. A sub-seasonal weather forecast attempts to predict weather conditions 3 to 4 weeks in advance. Its predictions. I think we have this independent clause here, right? Advance, our independent clause ends at advance. And after the independent clause, we need to have a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Since A does not have a comma and a coordinating conjunction, we eliminate A. Then C, you just can't have a comma after an independent clause. If you want to connect two independent clauses. So we eliminate C, and D will be a fused sentence. So we eliminate D as well. So the correct answer is B. Two independent clauses are being joined by a semicolon. The correct answer is B. Number 9. However, when the arrival of European missionaries brings changes to you, the novel asks a central question. So now, whatever is after the colon, it needs to be a question, and it needs to end with, it's like quite literal. It needs to end with a question mark. So C and D are clearly not correct. Now, in a question, we understand that the subject and verb get inverted. So if I say I am a teacher, and let's say I get an existential crisis, so I say, am I a teacher? So I is the subject and am is the verb, and if it's a question, you see that the subject and the verb get reversed. Similarly, if I say I drink coffee, so if I have to make it into a question, I'll say, do I drink coffee? Now, of course, the verb is still after the subject, but here the helping verb is before the subject, I. So again, the inversion is still happening. So it's definitely going to be, how will use tradition be affected? All right. So the correct answer is A, because the inversion has happened. Will and traditions. All right, number 10. Now this is an interesting question. So, like an Elvis impersonator who might bear a striking resemblance to the late music icon Elvis Presley himself, this is your introductory element, and after every introductory element we put a comma, and then we start an independent clause. And Elvis taxon is not the real thing, however. So after the independent clause, we have a comma, and then we have our transition word, which is however. And the transition word ends, you end the transition word by, after the transition word, you put a full stop or a period. And then you start your next independent clause. I see 2. It is a misidentified look-alike. So the correct answer is D. Okay. C is incorrect because however, but, it's awkward. However is there for contrast, and even but is there for contrast doesn't make any sense at all. Now B, you need, at however your independent clause ends, so you need to put a punctuation. So B is going to create a fused sentence, so even B is incorrect, and A is going to create a comma splice. Okay. So it's like an Elvis impersonator blah 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 to the music icon Elvis Presley himself. This is your introductory element. Then you put a comma, and then you say, an Elvis taxon is not the real thing, however. There is contrast between the introductory element, and the independent clause. And how do you demonstrate that? By using however, of course, at the end. And at however your independent clause ends or your sentence ends, and you put a period and you start your next independent clause. It is a misidentified lookalike. Next, number 11. Okay, he's known for enforcing a moral code called the Law of Piety, which established the sanctity of animal life, the just treatment of elderly, and the abolition of the slave trade. It sounds like a list, right? So, of course, we look at, so here, this is item number 2, and this is item number 3, and the sanctity of animal life is item number 1. So if there are 3 or more items, we use the comma to separate them. If the items have got internal punctuation, then we use the semicolon. But here we can clearly see that the comma is being used to separate the items. So here we need the comma. So the correct answer is D, the sanctity of animal life, comma, the just treatment of the elderly, comma, and the abolition of the slave trade, period. Okay, number 12. In a 2016 study, Eastern Washington University psychologist AEL found that among the study participants who experienced F, a physiological response akin to the goosebumps or getting the chills, while listening to music, comma, there was one personality trait that they scored particularly high on. So at high on, your independent clause ends, and it looks like you want to explain. A personality trait. So of course, we're going to use the colon. What was something that they scored particularly high on? Explanation and openness to experience. So the correct answer is D. Why is A incorrect? Because openness to experience is not an independent clause. So you can't connect two independent clause. You can't connect. Openness to experience is a phrase. So you can't connect an independent clause in a phrase with a semicolon. That's just not how it works. It's just awkward. So you eliminate A. B sounds super awkward. They scored particularly high on openness to experience. Shouldn't it be there was one personality trait that they scored particularly high on openness to experience? If you just read it, you just find it super awkward to listen to. So B is also incorrect, and A is same as the C. On openness to experience is not. It's a fragment. It's a phrase. So of course we can't use fragments in formal English. So the correct answer is D. Okay, now number 13. Okay, the arrangement of the figures according to S represents her idea that we all come from the earth, comma, generation after generation. So here the independent clause is the arrangement of the figures. The arrangement of the figures represents her idea that we all come from the generation after generation. And according to S is your non-essential element. Now, how are we separating the non-essential element? By using a comma. So if there is a comma on one end, you need to put a comma on the other end as well. So the correct answer will be A. Simple, right? Okay, number 14. As Spivak points out, is your introductory element. After the introductory element, you put a comma like a nice student. Then we have S is not the protagonist of Shelley's novel. Then you have your independent clause. After the independent clause, you have to have a comma and a coordinating conjunction. Is there a comma and a coordinating conjunction in the options? No. Do we have a period? No. We just have a semicolon. So the answer is C. So you end your independent clause, then you put your transition word or your introductory element, which is rather. After the transition word or the introductory element, you put a comma. And then we have, as the recipient of the letters that frame the book's narrative, is another introductory element. and after the introductory element, you put a comma again, and then you start your independent clause 2. It is, she is the occasion of it, period. So the correct answer is C. Okay, number 15. Um, hmm. However, a team led by anthropologist Dr. Richard used accelerator mass spectrometry to uncover evidence that it was occupied earlier. So at earlier, your independent clause ends. Okay. So we're gonna go with C. That's the correct answer. After, I'm just gonna write the structure here. First you have, okay, first you have however, your transition word. After the transition word, you put a comma. Then you start your independent clause. After the independent clause, you put a period. After the period, it is in 1420 CE, your introductory element. After the introductory element, you put a comma. After the comma, there is another introductory element. Then you put a comma again. And then you start your independent clause 2. Humans were likely inhabiting the area. So why is it's very tempting for us to pick D, but the problem is that D is going to result in a fused sentence whenever you have two independent clauses lined up. A team led by anthropologist Dr. Richard Berger used accelerator mass spectrometry to uncover evidence that it was occupied earlier. This is independent clause 1. And then humans were likely inhabiting the area. This is independent clause number 2. Whenever you have two independent clauses, you have to make it a point to have a comma in a coordinating conjunction or a semicolon or a period in between. You know, you have to like sandwich the two independent clauses. The two independent clauses sandwich these punctuation symbols. So between two independent clauses, either have a period or a semicolon or a comma and a coordinating conjunction. So D is not the correct answer because that's going to result in a fused sentence. B is going to result in a comma splice, and A is also going to result in a comma splice. All right, 16. 16. This question is fairly straightforward. While one requires oxygen and one does not, so you understand that this is a DC. While one requires oxygen and one does not, thanks to the word while, which is the subordinating conjunction here. So it's clearly D. So after the after the DC, you put a comma and then you start your IC. What is your IC? Aerobic and anaerobic respiration are both forms of cellular respiration. So it's DC plus comma plus IC. Last. Okay, so in an exhibition called Figuring History, comma, the African-American artist Robert Colescott provided tongue-in-cheek send-up of the famous depiction of George Washington crossing the Delaware. So African-American artist is your title, and title for who? Robert Colescott. So whenever you're talking about a person, if you're talking about a historical person, or if you're reporting a person and the event that they participated in, of course you need to give a title to that person. You just can't introduce that person by their name. So whenever the title is before the name, no need to separate it with commas. So in an exhibition called Figuring History is your introductory element. It's your introductory element. After the introductory element, there is a comma, and then you have your IC. The African-American artist Robert Colescott provided tongue-in-cheek stand-up of the famous depiction of George Washington crossing the Delaware, and after that you have a period. In that IC, there is a subject, which is Robert Colescott. This is the subject. So Yeah, so whenever, so the title for the subject is the African American artist, and do not separate the title and the name with the comma, especially when the title is before the name. Okay, so yeah, that's all. I think we have studied punctuation in great detail, and it was just lovely, teaching you all punctuation. And I hope the entire series of videos, the mini lessons, were helpful. Um, yeah, and it was just too much fun teaching you all. So thank you for being a part of this project. Thank you, and many thanks for listening.